So the public comment will be 3 then.
Yeah, per person.
Okay. I call this meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance. Thank you all for attending this evening. Will the city clerk please take attendance?
All council members are present, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second?
Are there any comments from the public on the agenda? Council questions, comments? Please call the roll.
Avery.
Aye.
Doran. Aye. Niemeyer.
Aye.
Specker.
Aye.
Tiltonburn.
Aye.
Wendell.
Aye.
Okay, first thing on our agenda is the discussion with the applicants for the vacant city council seat. Our applicants are Al Ostrom, Larry Ayers, Lisa Hager, Michael Lambertus, Blake Stevens, and Zeno Wicks III. We will go in alphabetical order. Each applicant will have up to 10 minutes to make introductory remarks. Council will try and hold it 5 minutes so that we're not here till midnight. And then after we've interviewed every one of the candidates, there will be open time for public comment. So let's get started. Al Ostrom, you're up.
Good evening. First off, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to appear before this body as it considers an appointment to complete the 7-member Brookings City Council. As you know, I have taken an active interest in serving on the council by running for election the last 2 years, narrowly missing election both years, less than 1% last year and only a couple percentage points this year. Sadly, if I had not taken the initiative to collect signatures and file a petition as a council candidate, there would not have been a city election. That's not a sign of an engaged community. We live in a great community. Its council should be filled with people who have enough interest in their community to go door to door, collect signatures, and run a campaign. Our community engagement is not good, proven by our election turnouts. What would our engagement be had we not had an election in the last 2 years? I have the commitment. My commitment also is seen in the 3 decades in which I have made Brookings my home. It is also where I have owned and operated a successful and growing landscaping business. There is no experience like operating business, making payroll, planning strategy, and overseeing people. I currently employ over 20 people and do my very best to keep as much revenue as possible in the Brookings community. Those skills are directly applicable to the skills needed to be a good city council member and would bring greater viewpoint diversity to the council. The housing situation in Brookings is very important. I have been involved in both providing affordable housing, but also trying to help employees find affordable housing. I find it interesting that there are 7 candidates for the appointed position, but a couple of months ago, there was only 1 person outside of the incumbents who was interested in serving. I am that 1 person. 2 seats are up for election every year. I would suggest that anybody who is interested in serving should prove their interest by making the effort to collect signatures and actually get voters to back their efforts. In the past 2 elections, I had more than 1,200 voters say they wanted me to serve on the city council. No other candidate here tonight can say that. In fact, 3 of the candidates didn't even vote in the last 2 city elections. It makes one wonder what the commitment is to city government. I have a proven track record of being able to work with others, serving on a number of youth sports boards and establishing a large network of business contacts. I look forward to bringing a fresh perspective to the Brookings City Council and sharing my experience and knowledge in the coming year as this council faces a number of major decisions. A couple quick stats for you. I was 116 votes short this year, but compared to last year, I received more votes this year than anybody received last year. So of the public that's willing to get out there and vote, we can't say that I don't have some public support. And with that, I guess leave it up to any questions.
Thank you, Al. Any questions for Al? Councilmember Specker?
So we're in the questioning period?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Do you believe the city of Brookings is more efficient, less efficient, or about the same as other municipalities of its size? And how would, if not, how would you increase efficiency?
A little bit hard to answer off the cuff. I would say that it'd be very hard to say that any organization, group, or anything could say they've achieved 100% efficiency. Efficiency in the business world is something that you're always striving to do better. You always want to do better. No, I don't think anybody could ever say that this is the best we could get. You know, it's kind of playing a game of golf. You know, you can have the best shots in the world, but when you get done, there's always that one. It's like, I could have done a little bit better. So Brookings does have its advantages. Trust me, I've worked all over eastern South Dakota, and I've worked in a lot of different communities. Brookings has its advantages over other communities, but there's also a few things that could be done a little bit differently that would make it a little bit more efficient and what you might call user-friendly. I don't know if that answers your question.
Not the how, but
Oh. Well, how to make it more efficient? It would involve an internal look at each area and how, you know, like I say, a lot of information would need to be gathered and looked at to be able to understand, you know, how it could be more efficient.
okay, thank you.
Councilmember Duran?
Thank you, Mayor. Excuse me. Thank you all for being here and answering questions tonight for your appointment. My question revolves around strategic plans and key issues. So what do you believe are the key issues of our community? And what strategic plans do you believe we currently have in place to address them or leave any gaps?
Okay, the number one concern that I think is pressing to our community is affordable housing. And I can say that as a business owner, it is very hard to attract employees in Brookings right now. Over half of my workforce lives outside of Brookings, and they would all like to live in Brookings. And currently, I'm losing employees to other communities. Even though they're making less money, they can save time and gas and all that on the commute. But at this point in time, they can't afford to live here. So unfortunately, it's not something that we can all just say, hey, let's do this, problem solved. It's something that's going to take a lot, basically all entities in Brookings, Brookings City, Brookings County, you know, and I'm pretty sure we do have a city have a task force or a committee that's looking at that. But I think my experience in working in the Brookings community for the last 30 years, I mean, I know every neighborhood like the back of my hand. I can tell you which neighborhood is going to have water in their basement, which neighborhood has the best topsoil, all that stuff. And that's the number one thing that concerns me that I think needs to be addressed. The other thing is for our youth. What I can do for my community now is I can make a difference now, but the biggest difference is what it's going to make for the youth that are going to be here 20 years from now. And sometimes it's hard to keep that in perspective, that what we do today is for today, but in all reality, we're doing it for tomorrow's generation.
Can I ask a follow-up to that? Just a clarification. Yeah. So do you believe that any of our current strategic plans or master plans that we have, like which ones do you believe address those issues, and what gaps in those strategic plans do you believe exist?
Well, I guess I don't know exactly what strategic plans there are, but all plans are temporary. You can come up with a plan today and say, this is my plan for the next 5 years. And that would still have to be evaluated on an annual basis and most likely be changed. You know, community engagement is, again, my number one concern. The fact that we have such a poor voter turnout is very disappointing, that there's that many people in our community that either don't care or don't think that their voice makes a difference. And that's something that I would completely strive to change. I do community engagement all day, every day. I deal with contractors, customers, people out in the community. And that's the best thing about my job, I guess, is being out and about. You know, my office is in my pickup, so I move around the community all day, every day, meeting with people, talking with people, and between that and the employees that I employ, I realize the struggles that a lot of people in our community have. You know, there's a lot of things that I think as a community we could all pitch in and do a little bit better, but that's what I'm willing to do, and that's what I would like to do, is help Brookings be better.
Councilmember Tilton Burn.
Thank you for your ongoing interest in joining the council. My first question that I have is, I think everyone is familiar with the council meetings, the time that we meet, the number of times that we have council meetings, but this role includes a lot of work outside of the regular council meetings. Talk to us a little bit about what you think the outside involvement is beyond the regular council meetings and what you would do to engage with folks outside of the regular meeting times.
I fully understand that the time spent in here is just a very small fraction of what it takes. I've been on many youth boards, and the monthly meeting was always the easy part. It was all the phone calls and emails and everything after that. My kids, well, my youngest is a senior. He'll be moving on to the next chapter of his life, so I don't have any kids at home. You know, for the last 15, 20 years, I probably wouldn't have had time to do that. But I do have the time to do that, and I do have the time to engage with people, and I will make the time. I guess that's the way I was raised. If somebody asked me, when are we done for the day? I don't know. We're not done till the work is done. You know, so the job never ends till the work is done.
Councilmember Wendell.
Thank you, Mayor. Al, how would you describe the relationship between a counselor and city staff, the city manager, department heads, other staff members?
As to how it should be, or
How you
I don't-
perceive that
I-
relationship?
Well, I think everyone should have a good relationship. I mean, it should be able to speak freely and ask questions back and forth and use each other's, you know, bounce ideas off each other to gain knowledge and share knowledge. I mean, that's the biggest asset a community has this size, is the knowledge that's already here. And, you know, we need to make sure we're tapping into all that knowledge so that we're using the best information at all times. I don't know if that kind of answers what you're looking for.
I was sort of, I think you did. I was looking for kind of how you have pictured how you would build a relationship with staff, how you would lean on or work with staff, what you see as the role of yourself on the council and working with staff.
I guess my role would be to, A, get to know the staff and understand what their task actually is, what their job entails. It's always hard to understand anybody's daily struggles till you truly understand what their actual job or task is. So, I mean, that would be the first thing, I think, is to totally understand what their job is and, you know, what it entails and what could be done to make it better.
Councilmember Avery.
Al, thanks for coming and sharing your thoughts tonight, and thanks for all the effort you've put into running. Just a question. I know you've been somewhat critical of the council in our number of yes votes, and I understand some of that, but is there a particular decision that we've made that you think is just opposed to what you would have done if you would have been here?
Yes, there's definitely some votes that I would have probably had an opposing view, but my theory on that is that it's a 7-member council, so you should have 7 independent thinkers, 7 independent thoughts. So I think in a healthy group, there should always be, you know, maybe some dissenting back and forth, discussion back and forth, and you know, I would think that probably not everybody would agree all the time. In a perfect world, maybe. My wife and I don't even agree all the time, so I know how that works. But there are different things that I think could have had a little bit more discussion and maybe had a little bit deeper look into. And I think part of that's engaging the community to find out what their thoughts and knowledge is.
So, Councilmember Wendell.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to follow up on Councilor Avery's question because
Okay.
you have run for the council twice, you've attended lots of council meetings, and you've made lots of public comments disagreeing with unanimous votes. So I'm wondering if you can actually cite any votes where you would have been a no vote on items where the council voted yes and you thought
Well-
they shouldn't be 7-0.
Okay. I guess what lit the fire in me to want to get engaged in public politics is when we changed the floodplain ordinance 2 years ago. I was busy running my business and doing my stuff, and I had a realtor call me and say, "Hey, do you know what they're voting on tonight?" And I said, "You know what? I don't have a clue." And kind of explain it to me. So I came to the council meeting, and you changed the 1 foot above floodplain was perfectly capable of covering all the needs that needed to be. Trust me, I've lived in that floodplain and operated in that floodplain for 30 years. I know that creek better than anybody. But when I stood at this podium and I said to the council members here, I said, this is going to adversely affect my business. It lowered my property value, and I'm hamstrung now. I can't build another building on my property if I wanted to. And when I said that this will adversely affect my business, instead of having 7 people just look at me and then all say aye, I think the correct response would have been, could you please explain why or how? I just stood here and nobody wanted to even talk back. And like I say, that was the decision that kind of drove me to, okay, I can make a difference. I want to get involved. So,
Thank you. That's what I was looking for.
yep.
Okay, I'm going to stop, or I'll make a last question. So we have continuously seen a lot of the programs that we've had for our youth in town through United Way, through a couple other agencies. Our federal funding is being stopped. And how do you see our community trying to wrap around that so that we can keep these programs going for our youth? For, say, some of the less advantaged. We're looking at a crisis like any other community is, where we're losing outside funding to help with our programs. What's your thoughts?
My thoughts is that Brookings is a very generous community, and if we can't depend on funding from outside sources, then we have to strap up our boots and work together to make these things happen. I've been involved in fundraising for youth organizations for many, many years. I know how giving the businesses in Brookings are in donating money to youth sports. Like I said in my campaign, the 2 things that I would want to support the most is our youth and our veterans. They're 2 groups that are very important, and we need to make sure that we're providing for both of them and giving them the due respect that they both deserve.
All right, thank you, Al. All right, we'll go on to the next candidate, Larry Ayers.
Thank you. I'll just give you just some quick brief background about myself. My wife and I moved here in 1996.
Larry, you might want to get closer to the mic. Make sure that we get the recording on it.
You don't want to miss a word that I'm going to say, right? So I moved here my wife and I moved here in 1996 so that my wife could open up a veterinary clinic. We raised 3 children here. I have 3 daughters. My oldest daughter has Down syndrome. She lives at home with us and works at the Children's Museum of South Dakota. My middle daughter, Anna, graduated from the University of Minnesota, and she's involved with Minneapolis city government there. My youngest daughter graduated from NDSU, and you'll see a theme here where our family has made some questionable college educational decisions as I work through this. She graduated from North Dakota State University, and she's currently in graduate school in Omaha at Creighton. Another misstep in education here, I graduated from the University of South Dakota with an elementary education degree and a master's degree later in special education. I taught for 33 years. I taught 10 of those years in Mitchell. I taught 1 of them in Hendricks and 22 years in Brookings. The last 7 years that I spent working with the Brookings School District, I had the good fortune of working on the SDSU campus with a program called Project Search, which was a Brookings Public School project where I got to work with high schoolers who had a disability who spent a year on campus at SDSU and worked through 3 job rotations where they learned job skills so that they could become competitively employed. Had a wonderful relationship with SDSU, and it was just couldn't ask for a better host site. I did that for the final 7 years of my teaching. My community involvement, we've been rental property owners for about 25 years in our family. I spent 7 years on the South Dakota Department of Education Special Education Advisory Panel. I spent 9 years with the Brookings Area Interagency Board. We did the STARS program and the Camp Adventure program, which is a horse riding program for individuals with disabilities. And Camp Adventure is also a camp experience for individuals with disabilities. And then I was also on the Special Olympics Brookings Area Governing Board, where I served as treasurer for about 8 years. I decided to apply for this position. I guess I kind of was fitting shortly before I decided to apply. I saw a quote from, it was attributed to Denzel Washington. I'm not going to say that that's wholly true or not, but he said that there's 3 phases in your life, a learning phase, an earning phase, and then a returning phase. And I'm kind of moved into that returning phase and decided to take an interest in possibly serve on the council. I have the luxury, I guess, of being able to have coffee with a couple groups now, which is something I couldn't do while I was teaching school. And we talk about a lot of things. We've solved a lot of world problems. We've talked about a lot of sports. But one thing that comes up over and over and over again is how fortunate we are and how glad we are that we live in Brookings. Brookings has been a wonderful community. We go places, we go on vacations, we come back, we talk about our vacations and how glad we are to be back in Brookings and how fortunate we are to live in a community like Brookings. I applied for this, to fill this position for a year. I'm not coming in with any kind of an agenda or anything like that. I think in the almost 30 years that we've been here, for the most part, I felt like that I was glad that there were people like you that were willing to take on this job. It hasn't always been easy, and it's hard because you just don't get to make decisions that make everyone happy along the way. But for the most part, I've been over 30 years very pleased, very happy that we've had people that are willing to be involved and have done a fabulous job of moving the city forward. I think that overall things are going well. I think there's certainly room for improvement with some things, as we move forward. And as Hope talked about earlier, I think that some things are going to get more difficult as funding gets more scarce. And I think things that concern me probably in the very near future for Brookings, one that you've already addressed, I think affordable housing has been a concern and will be a concern for a long time coming. Brookings is an expensive community to live in. I think that increased recreational opportunities is something that's important to Brookings, and it's going to be something that's going to be very difficult or more difficult to provide as we move forward with less funding. I think childcare is probably something else that we're going to be talking about for a long time in Brookings, and trying to figure out ways that we can help people find childcare so that they can work. I think that things like engaging the community more. We seem to be going through a situation where there's a lot of lonely people out there, trying to find ways to engage more people and more opportunities for people to connect. And then I think finally, or not finally, I guess I have 2 left, continuing to bring more businesses to Brookings. We have a fantastic downtown. And I know people, I was born and raised in Sioux Falls. I know people that leave Sioux Falls to come to Brookings just to visit our downtown. And so I think as we move forward with growing the city and that bringing in more businesses and more business opportunities are things that are important. So.
Okay, thank you, Larry. Questions for Larry? Councilmember Tilton Burn.
Thank you for your interest in this position. I'll ask you the same question that I asked last time, and that's, this council obviously meets at our regular meetings, but in addition to these regular meetings, there's a lot of other engagement and other commitments that we have for this role. Tell us a little bit about what you believe that looks like outside of these meetings and what you would give to the outside commitment beyond the meetings.
Well, I think in large part, it's very similar to what I did at the SDSU campus. I was fortunate enough to be the person who was chosen to start the Project Search program. And one of the things that I had to do was come to the SDSU program, introduce the SDSU community to our program, and get entities on campus interested in providing intern or rotations for our interns. And building those relationships with people, engaging them, building rapport, talking to people, being open to listen to diverse opinions and things that I might not always necessarily agree with, but certainly willing to have an open mind as we approach everything.
Councilmember Avery.
Again, thanks for coming and
Thank
sharing
you.
your thoughts with us. What would your top priorities be if you were appointed to the council and to help us move forward in the community in areas that you think are important?
Sure. I think the things I talked about, I think, affordable housing is a big issue, a tough thing to solve. I don't have any magic bullet or any way to solve that, but I certainly think that there are avenues that we could explore and people that we could talk to in other cities that maybe have done things that might improve that situation for us. I think the increased recreational opportunities, it'd be interesting to see how the purchase of the Fifth Street gym pans out. We were fortunate. We had a couple of people that were really engaged with the community and developed the FIT indoor soccer facility. In addition to that, I think that finding Sioux Falls has been pretty engaged in trying to find ways that they can assist with daycare or provide daycares or opportunities and things like that. So I think that would be a thing that's important. And then I think continuing to invite businesses to come to Brookings, and I think helping the businesses that are already here to find ways to grow and finding employees, like Al mentioned. It's not only a matter of finding an employee, but it's also trying to find a place for that person where they can live and that they can afford. So I think those would probably be things that are major priorities at this point.
Councilmember Duran.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for being here and asking questions, or answering questions, excuse me. So I'll ask the same question as well. You had noted multiple key issues that our community is facing, so you can expand on those in this answer or point out others. We've created numerous working strategic plans over the past years that guide our work and our vision for the community. So looking at the key issues that our community is facing, what strategic plans do you believe currently address these issues, and what gaps, if any, do you see exist in those plans?
Well, to be perfectly honest, I'm not really very familiar with the exact details of the strategic plans and so forth, but I know that one thing that you've been working on and talking about is affordable housing, and like I said, that's a difficult task to accomplish, and I'm certain that probably engaging outside sources and things like that have had good luck developing those types of situations would certainly be beneficial for us. I think that you guys have done a nice job of tackling some of the recreational issues in town. I was on years ago when they built the new pool, or added on to the pool, that they had talked about things. I was on that committee. I talked about somewhere down the road adding a lazy river to the pool, things like that. At one point when the high school pool needed work, they had talked about maybe expanding that into an indoor pool recreation area for the city. Decided that probably at the time it wasn't something that was financially feasible, and probably even less so at this point in time. But continuing to work on those types of things and those plans that the city is already engaged in.
Councilmember Specker.
Larry, can you think of something that the council's done in the last several years that you supported, and explain why you supported it or your opinion on it?
Sure. So
Or if you want to think hard, you can also think of something that we didn't support.
No, well, like I had mentioned earlier, certainly I'm not going to agree with everybody on everything, but, for in large part, I think that most of what the council has done has been, I've been on the same page. And that's not always necessarily good. I think that it's good to hear opposing voices and other opinions and entertain those, certainly. And I hate to wade into too sensitive waters here, but I think that during COVID, I think that the city council had some very tough decisions to make. And I think if you look back on that, I think that there were some decisions that were probably very good decisions, and I think maybe there were some decisions that were a little, maybe not as prudent as they could have been, but hindsight's 20/20. I think that the council was put in a difficult situation. I think that we had a governor who largely passed the buck on that and sent it to the cities and let them each kind of wade through that on their own without giving much guidance. And I think in light of the entire situation and everything that happened, and I think there were a lot of people that it wasn't popular with, but I think at the time and given the information that the city council, stepped up to the plate, did what they thought was best with the information they had, and did a nice job and handled that as well as they probably could have given the circumstances.
Thank you.
Councilmember Wendell.
Thank you, Mayor. Larry, can you talk to us about your collaborative style, how you work with people, the importance of working together as a council, or at times when you disagree, how you communicate with colleagues?
Sure. So, I think I'll kind of lean back on my educational experience. Every year I was handed a group of students and their parents that I had to build a relationship with. And, I tried very hard to be, I think, I had student teachers along the way, and I told the student teachers, I said, you're probably going to see a lot of things that you probably never ever want to do in your classroom. But I said, one thing that you want to pay attention to, I said that I think I do well is communicate. And I said, you need to build relationships with people, and you need to have an open line of communication with people. And they have to feel safe in that they're not going to be judged when they share an opinion or something that's important to them with you. And so I had to do the same thing at SDSU. We started from scratch with Project Search, and we built relationships with many departments and many different people. And we worked in places like the Provost's office, where we were working with people who had advanced degrees, and we worked in the food service industry. We worked with Aramark at the time. We worked with custodial staff. So we worked with a wide variety of people that we had to build relationships with all of them. And we valued all of that work and all of those opportunities. So I think that just spending the time getting to know people and letting them know that you're invested and care about what they're doing goes a long way towards building those relationships.
All right, Larry, I'll ask the last question. I'm going to kind of do the same one I did with Al, but I guess I should have asked the question more pointedly than I did. So we all know that we're losing federal funding for quite a few of the programs that we have going on in the community of Brookings, and other communities are dealing with the same thing. We know that the public will probably step up to the plate, but where do you see the city of Brookings being part of that?
Well, that's an excellent question, and you veered off in a direction that I didn't think you were going to go. So I had a really good answer for the question that you didn't ask. But I think that Brookings has been fortunate. We have a group of people in this town who have been amazingly generous with their, especially with their money. Time as well, but in terms of money, if you go through town and you look at certain names that are on certain buildings, that they have been very good to this community in terms of building that. And so I think that you having been involved with 3 organizations that we relied solely on donations, that it's hard because you can't keep going back to those same people over and over and over again and expecting them to support and do everything. So, it's going to be an interesting situation for Brookings in terms of when that money starts to dry up, finding ways that we can more efficiently provide services for recreation and youth and things like that with less money, and just doing more with less. I think it certainly can be done. It'll be harder, and there'll be people that will probably have to do more than they're typically used to, but I think that it's possible to kind of rally the troops and bring things together and get people to help out and step up.
All right, thank you.
You bet, thank you.
All right, so our next candidate is Lisa Hager.
I wanted to start out my 10 minutes by just thanking Mayor Niemeyer and everyone on council for reviewing my application and giving me the chance to speak to you all today. A little bit about me. I'm originally from Grundy Center, Iowa, which is near the Waterloo, Cedar Falls area. I got my bachelor's degree in political science from Wartburg College, and then I pursued my master's and PhD in political science at Kent State University in Ohio. As I was finishing up my doctoral work, I served as an American Political Science Association Congressional Fellow in the office of now former Congressman Daniel Lipinski. In his Washington, D.C. office, I covered the Science, Space, and Technology Committee, primarily because his district was Illinois 3, which covered a portion of southern Chicago and the suburbs, and two of the landmarks there were Midway Airport and Argonne National Lab. So covering the Science, Space, and Technology Committee as an entry-level staffer often meant trying to just figure out more about the topics we would be talking about before actually giving recommendations on policy. I had no idea what the difference was between fission versus fusion or anything about advanced battery storage or technology transfer. So I did a lot of research, which was something that I brought to the office, was research skills. I also worked closely with the STEM Education Caucus that the congressman co-chaired, and then covered a variety of other policy areas, including agriculture, education, campaign finance reform, voting rights, and Native American policy. While I was in his office, I was also on the academic job market, and the minute I saw the job at SDSU, that was my #1 job. I wanted that one. The reason why was because it was getting me closer to where I was from. I would no longer have to get stuck in O'Hare on my way home for holidays. I could actually drive home, but also because it was a position where there was a balance between teaching and research, and I would be able to teach classes in both of my areas of expertise relating to constitutional law and American political institutions. I would also have the opportunity of serving as the pre-law advisor, and I was really passionate about being able to work with students one-on-one. Lo and behold, I went through some of the initial interviews, and I did in fact receive the offer, and honestly, the rest is history. This is my 9th year at SDSU. I've gone through tenure and promotion, so I'm an associate professor of political science and am nearing the opportunity to go up for another promotion soon. I've honestly found my forever home. The minute that I walked on SDSU's campus here in Brookings, I felt so incredibly welcome. But moving to Brookings did pose some challenges for me. I didn't know anybody outside of who I had interviewed with when I first moved here. And then there was the challenge of actually finding a place to live. I ideally was looking for a condo or a townhome, something where I didn't have to do snow removal or lawn care. And I quickly found that that really wasn't something that was very prevalent in Brookings at the time. And so I ended up finding a 2-bed, 1-bath home, which was wonderful. I was able to build equity and then eventually purchase my forever home just recently. But encountering those problems, I started to think about how I can't be the only person who's experiencing this. And I leaned into my passion for public service. There must be others experiencing this and others working on these issues. So I focus more on the opportunity to network with young professionals and got involved with initiatives through the Brookings Economic Development Corporation and the Brookings Chamber of Commerce. I became most active with the Connect 2140 committee through the chamber, where I served as both co-chair and chair during my time there. I worked on planning networking opportunities for young professionals and also workshops that would be of interest to them. As I lived in Brookings longer, I sought to connect beyond just the young professional networks that I had made and to seek out more service opportunities. So I joined the Brookings Rotary Club. It was a wonderful opportunity to meet others, but also learn more about what's going on in the community, and then of course participate in service projects. Because I saw Rotary as such a valuable opportunity, I again was involved in the membership committee. So I served as the director of that, but since transitioning from that role, I'm still heavily involved in recruitment and retention. Most recently, my public service has focused on serving as the vice chair for the Brookings City Charter Review Commission, which if anyone has heard me talk about that, I definitely had a lot of fun nerding out on a government document. But what I enjoyed most about that opportunity was the opportunity to apply a lesson from my time in Congressman Lipinski's office, which was anytime you're doing work in the public sphere, you're bringing your own education, knowledge, and expertise to that situation. But it's also important to take a step back and reach out for feedback from the folks who would be most impacted by the work that you're doing. And so serving as the vice chair gave me that opportunity. At every step throughout the process, as we were working on the revisions, we got to work closely with all of you, city staff, and community members. And something I enjoyed quite a bit was after we actually had our revisions approved for the ballot, we were able to engage in a public information campaign. So I got to speak along with Chief Justice David Gilbertson to a variety of community groups about the changes that we made, but more importantly, why we made those changes. And I think that was very important for folks to get that information of why we were doing what we were doing so that they could make the decision on whether or not to support the charter. As we know, the charter revisions did in fact pass, and around the time that my time as vice chair was wrapping up became the opportunity to apply for the vacancy on council. And so I thought this was a perfect way to continue serving the community of Brookings because I am very passionate about this community. It's my forever home, but also I do like the way in which Brookings is moving as a community, and I would like to participate in allowing that to continue to happen. If I do receive an appointment to council, I would be interested in working on issues like affordable housing because that's something that I experienced moving here, so I can definitely be sympathetic to folks who are interested in that issue as well. But I think that speaks to other issues that are key in our community, which are workforce recruitment and retention and childcare. I think working on all of those together, we can really make a positive impact. So at this point, I thank you again for reviewing my application and letting me speak, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you have.
All right, thank you, Lisa. Questions? Councilmember Avery?
Well, Lisa, again, thank you for applying for the appointed position and for being with us tonight. How do you think that your considerable unique skill set and educational background can help this group do a better job of serving our community?
So my skills primarily are as an educator and a researcher, and I think that those are skills that are needed among members of legislative bodies at any level. And so I am definitely able to comb through all of the material that is needed to be looked at in order to start making decisions. But then when it does come time to actually engage with the public, I have the ability to synthesize that down for folks, because realistically, people are busy. They're not able to go through all of the information that is posted on the city's website, and really tell them, here's the lay of the land with respect to this issue. What are your thoughts with respect to that? And that was something that I did when I was serving as the vice chair for the City Charter Review Commission. Obviously, it would have been nice had every single person voted for it. I know that that's not realistic or anything like that, but I wanted to make sure that everybody had the information they needed in order to say yes or no. So serving on council again, I would want to make sure that people have the information they need to give me valuable feedback.
Councilman Duren?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Lisa, for being here tonight and answering questions. I'll ask the same question as well that I've previously asked. You noted a few key issues that our community is facing. We've created strategic plans, master plans. We've also completed initiatives, if you're not familiar with specific strategic plans. Which of these efforts do you see addressing the issues that you had noted, and what gaps, if any, do you see exist in those plans or initiatives?
So one initiative that I think has really done a good job of addressing one of my personal concerns having moved to Brookings was the need for higher development spots for building. So like the Branch Creek development, for instance, higher density, that's the term I'm looking for. Higher density zoning practices that allow for there to be more affordable housing. There's also been workforce housing that's been built here in Brookings that I think has been very helpful in terms of helping folks actually get into something that they've purchased and then been able to build equity. I know that there's been a variety of other initiatives focusing on, workforce recruitment, retention, and childcare. But I would say, the initiatives with respect to housing have really been moving in the direction that I would like to see, and I would like to continue to work on that. I've also been very impressed with the plans that have been put in place with respect to the marketplace. So I think there's been some very intentional thoughts about how to move forward with that space, and then also how to further develop that area. I know there's been talk about the possibility of, again, some maybe higher density mixed use properties where there could be some businesses on the bottom with some maybe apartments up at the top, kind of similar to what we see with Blue Salon and the apartments above there. So I think those sorts of initiatives are moving in the right direction, and I would like to continue to work on those.
Thank you.
Councilmember Tilton Burn?
Thank you for your interest in this position and for being here tonight. My question will be very similar to the one I've already asked, and that is, I think you probably experienced a little bit of what it's like to engage with individuals outside of these regular meetings as you went through the process with the charter and attending things like forums and presentations. So talk to us a little bit about how you envision the engagement of a council member outside of the regular meetings and how you would go about doing that.
So the minute I thought about applying for the vacancy, I started doing as much research as possible into all things relating to the expectations of meetings, but also members of council serving as ex officios, and really just looking at what is all going on that council members would be expected to go to. So many of the types of events we're seeing where public comment can be received. And so for me, before I even applied, I made sure that being able to attend, obviously, the meetings, but also being present in the community was something that I would be able to do given my work schedule. And I think one thing that I would like to do above and beyond the expectations of council members is to make a point to go to various events that are just happening within the community every couple of weeks. So I am just out and about, because I do know people are busy. They can't necessarily make it to council meetings, or maybe if I did try to hold some sort of public office hour, that might not really work with their schedule. So I think if I was actually just out and about in the community more frequently, that would allow people to then just kind of, pull me aside and say, hey, I really wanted to talk to you about this issue that's before council.
Councilmember Specker?
This kind of goes back to Wayne's question. So there's a lot of misinformation that's been circulating both about what the city can and can't do, or does and doesn't do. Do you have any sort of ideas on how to counter misinformation?
Yeah, that is a very tough sort of scenario to be in. I do know that there's been a recent initiative that's been launched by council where you all are making social media videos where you're just kind of talking through how to connect with council, even how to come and address you at meetings. And I think little videos like that are fun but also informative that can get out on social media is very key for people to start to realize that there are some things that are floating out around that aren't necessarily accurate with respect to that. So I think that's really a great initiative that I've seen recently, and I would keep up with that. I think too, one thing that I did when I was serving as the vice chair, I would just kind of look at any sort of posts the city was putting out with respect to the charter, and there were a few times I just hopped on when somebody asked a question. I was like, hey, I'm the vice chair. I can definitely answer that question for you. So I think that's also a strategy, because a lot of times that's where some of that misinformation can come out too.
Thank you.
Councilmember Wendell.
Thank you, Mayor. Lisa, can you talk a little bit about your working style, how you see yourself collaborating with colleagues on the council and members of the staff, and also if you would note how you handle conflict resolution?
For sure, yeah. So from my resume, you probably saw that I have a very collaborative work style in the way that I conduct research. Almost all of my publications are with fellow researchers. And so I just find that that's a more rewarding environment when you're able to work together with people, bounce ideas off. More heads are usually better than one in those different situations. And so I'm also somebody who just likes to be in more frequent contact with folks too. So if we are working through something, yeah, let's meet, let's try to go our separate ways and work on what we've talked about, but let's keep coming together. If we have a question as we're working on our individual parts, you know, just a quick text or email, those kinds of things to make sure that we're continuing to make progress on whatever it is that we're working on. So I'm very collaborative. I am also very thoughtful in terms of how I'm communicating. I sometimes probably overthink what I'm saying to someone just so that I'm making sure that I'm thinking how this could come across to them and whatnot. So very thoughtful, very collaborative. In terms of conflict resolution style, my approach is always to make sure that when I'm identifying that there's some sort of issue there, I'm thoughtful in terms of saying, I'm feeling this way. In my opinion, I think this is going in a direction that's unhealthy. I try to bring it from my point of view rather than saying you're making me feel this way or something along those lines that just kind of dumps the problem back on that person. So usually when I do that, that has been one where we can kind of, you know, cool down a little bit and have a more productive conversation about that conflict and then move forward.
All right, Lisa, I'll end the interview with my question, which is the same one that I asked the other two, is federal funding is getting pulled from quite a few of our initiatives for our youth in the city of Brookings. How do you see the city of Brookings being part of the solution?
I think one key way for the city is to engage in more of the partnerships, so similar to the Fifth Street Gym, but also there's a lot of other programming that's happening for youths with nonprofits and whatnot. I think one untapped potential would be working with SDSU. There's a lot of student clubs that could maybe provide some of the recreational opportunities. So I think students are always looking for opportunities. My students in Pre-Law Society are no exception. They're volunteering, some of them at teen court. So I think reaching out to SDSU and seeing if there's some ways, not only with academic programs, but also with some of the clubs to kind of supplement what the city is maybe struggling with given the tough financial conditions.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to the next candidate, Michael Lambertus. I hope I'm pronouncing the last name correctly. Close enough. Very good.
Hi, I've lived in Brookings since 2004. Over the years, this town has truly become home. In 2006, I joined the fire department, worked my way up from probie, officer, state instructor, lead evaluator, and president of the Volunteer Association. I retired from that in 22. After being out of the service for a couple years now, I'm looking for a way to get back in. Al asked a question earlier about why we didn't get a petition and run in the election. Person's got to start somewhere. That's how I feel about it. Even though I'm not in public service right now, I still continue that mission in a different way. I am in a management role with Avera, where I lead teams, support others, help find practical solutions to real-world problems. I got married in 2011 to Katie. We have a daughter, Matea. She will be a freshman, which is scary, already coming up this fall. We've built our life here as homeowners, neighbors, part of a community. At the core of who I am is the belief that good will always win over evil. That might sound simple, but it's a principle I've seen play out time and time again, whether in emergency situations, on the fire line, leadership roles, or in day-to-day interactions with others. I believe that when people come together with good intentions, integrity, and a willingness to listen and act, we can overcome just about anything. Now that I've stepped back from active emergency service, I'm looking for a new way to give back. I want to continue being part of something bigger than myself, to serve, to lead, and to help move Brookings forward in a way that reflects the values this community holds dear.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Mike? Councilmember Duran?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Michael, for being here today and answering questions. I'll keep asking the same question. What key issues do you believe our community is currently facing? And what strategic plans, master plans, or city initiatives do you believe address these? Or what gaps in these efforts do you see exist?
That's a big question. Everybody says affordable housing. I think affordable housing is relative. If you want affordable housing, you can't live beyond your means. That's just me. Strategic plans, I have no idea. I have no idea. Moving forward, I think as a whole, the city of Brookings is doing a fine job. But as for strategic plans already in the works, I don't know what's in the pipeline.
Sure. Could you broaden it to maybe initiatives?
Nope, I cannot.
Okay, thank
Drawing
you.
a blank.
Sure, okay, thank you.
Councilmember Avery?
Okay, just a question. What motivated you to apply for the position? Was there a certain event or a feeling that you had that you wanted to step forward and?
Not really any certain event, nothing that the council did right or wrong or indifferent. Just looking for a way to stay in public service without going back onto the fire line.
Councilmember Wendell?
Thank you, Mayor. Michael, will you talk to us a little bit about your working style, how you collaborate with colleagues, whether it's members of the council or members of the city staff, and maybe talk a little bit about conflict resolution and how you handle conflict?
Well, let's start with conflict resolution. I'm a very direct person. That's not always the best way to go, but I feel, for me, that sometimes that's just what needs to be done. I do call a spade a spade. Working with...
Nope, go ahead, finish.
No, go ahead.
I was going to go, you're not finished with your statement, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Working with other department heads, I may look unapproachable, but I really am. Super nice guy. I am easy to get along with, and I do listen with an open mind. So.
All right. Councilmember Specker?
This is more relative to your application.
Sure.
On the question of why you wanted to be on city council, you said because it's going to be a hoot. I'm just curious what you think is so funny.
I have a very, not a sick sense of humor, but pretty dark, right? And I look at things very differently. When I said it's going to be a hoot, because from day to day, you don't know what is going to be said about you, the council, the city. Social media is terrible. People just don't know who or what to believe anymore. That's where a hoot comes from for me.
Councilmember Tilton Burn.
So I will ask the same question that I've been asking, and that is that outside of these meetings that are our regular meetings, there's an additional commitment for council members. So talk to us a little bit about how you see that additional commitment and how you would go about doing that.
I have zero issue working additional commitments. Just like anything else, it always takes something extra. You always can't get the job done from 9 to 5. Whether it be my job at Avera, fire service, things are always happening. So if it's a meeting at 7, or if I got to be somewhere at noon, we'll make it happen.
All right. All right. So my question obviously is with federal funding being pulled on a lot of the programs that we have going on for our youth in town, how do you see the city being part of the solution?
The city may have to do a little fundraising, and instead of just, asking, it may take going door to door, knocking on doors. Also, if there's a surplus in the budget at the end of the fiscal year, put that back into the general funds. That would be a good start. Just got to look at it in different ways.
All right. Thank you very much, Michael. We'll go on to the next candidate now, Blake Stevens.
Hello, Council. Thank you for giving me this opportunity and looking at my application. This is going to be a little different than what I thought I was going to do about 24 hours ago. I had an entire 10-minute speech written out, and it was going to be pretty great in my opinion. But after a lot of introspection and deep thought, I think I'm actually going to withdraw my application. The primary reason being I don't think I can personally give the 110% of myself that I would want to the council. I'm going to be a senior next year at SDSU. I am also the College Democrat of South Dakota Vice President. I'm active in multiple clubs on campus. I am also a CA. The original reason why I applied for this position is I have a deep desire to work in government. My major at SDSU right now is political science, pre-law. My goal is eventually to go to law school and study constitutional law to help create a better society for not just South Dakotans, but all Americans. So I do have a desire to work on the council or in state legislature or national legislature. But right now, most of my politics are rooted in local government. So housing affordability, which basically everyone has mentioned so far. Community building is really big for me. I feel like that's probably the strongest, not strongest, the biggest problem we have is just building proper communities, not just in South Dakota, but just in the United States in general. But yeah, I think my biggest reason for withdrawing is just the fact I feel like I couldn't give everything that I would want to the position. But I will use part of my time here to actually advocate for somebody who has already applied. Lisa Haggard. So she has been a professor of mine a few times, but I think out of everybody who has applied, she's probably the absolute best candidate, best choice. She's already worked with the city council on her chapter revision. She's very detail oriented. If you saw her office, you'd be like, okay, this is set up for like a display, right? No one actually works in here. But she has a history in government work. I think, honestly, she would be your best choice. I know that's probably not going to sway anyone else's opinion, but I feel like I could just... But yeah, I could talk about all the initiatives that I'd be interested in working in. I could talk about my collaborative work ethic. I could also talk about government funding. But I feel like I've made my point. I'd like to withdraw, and if you do have any questions, I'm still here.
Councilmember Specker.
I'd just like to thank you for applying, but I think that if you go to law school, you might want to think about municipal law.
Yeah.
I'll just throw that out there.
No, that's fair. That's fair.
Well, thank you, Blake.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, so our next candidate is Zeno Wicks III.
Hannah Mark Lee withdrew from the race.
Thanks, you guys, for putting up with me one more time with feeling. I guess there is a typo on your thing. I've been here 45 years, not 35. And but professor at SDSU, recognized a Fulbright Scholar, Teacher of the Year many times, and those kinds of things, as well as I'm
Excuse me, Zeno, could move over close to the mic.
Got
Thank you,
it.
sir.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
As well as I own several businesses in town, have a good variety of employees, and so I understand indexing money and that sort of thing. As far as the government change, the one thing I would recommend is that for our boards and committees, we have spots for predicted people, like our Economic Development Corporation has, where there's a spot for the city, a spot for the county, those kinds of things, where if our planning and zoning had a realtor, so that when a realtor spoke, somebody didn't say, you're just saying that because you're a realtor. You're speaking for the realtors. And so we have that kind of representation, as well as regular members. But the idea of having people who are in that field to bring forth just the facts. So something to think about. But I guess I had sort of three goals to talk about is what I'm interested in. First of all, totally random model of saving money. As you know, I wrote letters to the editor and that kind of stuff. One place that I see we could save a little money, and that's just starting out. I believe there's a lot of places, if we went through things, that it costs about $70 to mow an acre of ground, and an acre of ground is mowed at least 4 times a year. So that would push up to about $300 an acre. And if we could find just 100 acres, we'd be saving $30,000. And one of the points I had is you could easily find 100 acres in the nature park. And the one question they had was that ticks get in there. And so I identified several different really nicely scented plants that could be put in there, chase all the ticks away. And that's just a simple example of places we mow where I think we could save a bunch of money. And, just have a model of looking through the way we spend money because we spend it. We do so many things because that's what we do. So that's just a simple example of, looking at money. Second thing is how can we make money? Well, back in the day, you all got somewhere along the lines. City Manager Brasino presented the program that we put together for the back in the day, the Swiftel Center, where we put together Al Kurtenbach and I and Daryl England and Phil Wagner put together a very comprehensive plan on how we might develop the center, focused much more on agriculture in certain areas. And the reason for it is if you go back to the COVID time, we had generations of $6 to $7 million in sales in a 4-week period. And that was tied to 2 different livestock shows that were bounced from other places that came here. And if you look at our place for, if you look at our place for livestock shows, it's ideal. All right off the interstate. Parking for all your equipment and that kind of stuff. Everything you could possibly need, and it's right there, as well as great restaurants, great hotels, all kinds of space like that. And if we went through and became the center of the upper Midwest for those kinds of shows, this town would make a fortune. So that's one example of where I think we can make a buck. And then finally, I think that one thing that we don't seem to do enough, we think about bringing your dreams and those kinds of things to the city, but I think we should think more about promoting us as a hometown. My slogan would be, Brookings, your hometown. And one of the coolest things about this town is we have one high school, we have one middle school, so all the kids get to know each other, all right? And all kids get to interact. It's not like we have 3 different high schools roaming around and that kind of stuff. So if we have that kind of focus, we have all kinds of several corporate indications here who invest a ton of money in our town, as well as having a university, all right, that brings all sorts of, cultural and athletic kinds of events that the people just love. And so if we started promoting our city as just your hometown, my wife, when I got married, she says, I don't care where we go, but when the first one starts kindergarten, we're not leaving until the last one gets out of high school. And she was a hometown girl. I was all over the place. And all 3 of my kids had kids that went to kindergarten in their weddings. And to this day, they still, all over the country, hang out with kids that, they got their football, whatever's together, and just all kinds of stuff, and it's kids, literally, they went to kindergarten with. And so I think promoting the town as, a logo, something like Brookings, your hometown, I think a lot of moms would really be appealed to that, that they're bringing people. And then, sorry. Get something to say? Oh, okay. And then the last couple, 3 things. I don't know. I didn't bring my phone. I better go grab that. As all of you know, that I'm not much for competitive sports. But I do have a couple of good laughs in terms of things to give you an indication that I do care. We had a ton of fun when I brought General Myrna Williamson down to the Board of Regents meeting when we were talking about Division 1, and I'm sitting next to her, and she is the last one to speak, and Tad Perry comes over and says to her, Madam, do you need some help getting up? And she goes, step aside, son. And she then walked up to the microphone and said to the regents, yes, no, or get out of the way. We just laughed so hard. And they approved it. And the other one was, I guess, when we went up for the marker that they had, the Dakota marker, the governor of North Dakota was sure he was going to take the marker home. But Bob Miller snuck in and took it, threw it in his car, and when they were getting ready to announce who gets the thing, Bob and I were already down the road with it. So those are a couple of good laugh stories. And then, I don't know, many of you've been getting in notes from me over the last year about kind of anthology things that, just trying to figure out my life so when I'm 100 I can sit and read about myself. And one came up from a pretty prominent member of the community that just said, I met Zeno more than 25 years ago. He introduced himself and told me he was on a mission to make Brookings fun. He wanted to transform the town into a hub of music, art, and community events. He envisioned pop-up concerts, local art showcases, outdoor film screenings, anything to give people a reason to get out, connect, and celebrate in hometown. His passion was palpable. He spoke of Brookings like it was an underdog with an untapped potential. As we talked and eventually met with a few people upstairs at the Ram Pub, I realized this wasn't just another guy with big dreams. He was someone who genuinely believed in the power of community and culture to transformation. By the time we parted ways, I found myself rooting for his vision of Brookings. And here we are today, 30 years later, with Brookings as a powerhouse of a city, complete with a Division I university. I'm pretty much sure Zeno had a lot to do with it. So, little comment, but I don't know, just gabbing away up here. Okay, what can I answer?
All right. Questions for Zeno? Councilmember Specker?
I'll be first. So Zeno, this question, I think you might have some insight because you were on council before.
Yeah, I was on the council. I was actually on the city commission when we changed forms of government too. It was really funny because they came up and interviewed me in front of my colleagues because I'd signed the form.
So, as been mentioned, I think Wayne might have mentioned it earlier in a question, but some members of the community feel that the council always unanimously approves everything. Could you offer any insight on why that might be, or why do you think it is?
Well,
knowing
I
how
don't,
it works?
I mean, they certainly are, you certainly agree on things, and I think it has probably a lot to do with you meet a lot before and figure out what you think is the best thing to do, but the thing that worries me only about it is there's not a lot of council, or not a lot of community engagement before, because I know you sort of meet 3 at a time and talk about things, and so you're sort of set in a place before you come to the meeting. And, and like I say, at the same time, I think you guys are doing a great job. I mean, I really, what you guys have accomplished is just downright amazing. But like I say,
So I have an add-on question to that, because a lot of the more controversial, bids are pretty unanimous. When it's the lowest bid, it's kind of hard to throw out a no note just so that it's not unanimous. But the more controversial issues, we do typically have study sessions on those.
Yeah.
Do you have any recommendations on how to get the public to participate more in the study sessions?
Well, that would be having study sessions and inviting them. But, the point about study sessions is putting out some kind of quote-unquote. I was talking with a few people this morning, and we thought it'd be a decent idea for just 5 or 6, 7 of us businessmen to get together and, sort of look in terms of focusing on things. Because, there's an awful lot of people you can call in this town who have a pretty decent sense of things. People by nature aren't so much to show up to things. All right, because, they're business people and they don't want people criticizing their business and that sort of thing. And so that's, traditionally we don't have a lot of business people, thank God for but we don't have a lot of business people applying for council because they're trying to run a business, and they don't need to get anybody mad at them. So they don't run.
All right, I'm just going to go down the list. Councilmember Avery?
Zeno, thanks for being here tonight and sharing with us some of your thoughts. Any particular thing that motivated you to come forward at this time to?
Well, I should have said it in the very beginning. I only applied because I thought if Alan Ostrom got elected, I just had the chance, that if he had got elected, then there would have been an open spot. So it wasn't, I'm not by any means competing against Alan. It was just the assumption that if he had got elected, there would be open spot, so. You know, so I mean, I wasn't ever going to run for office. It was never my plan, but it was a year, and I thought I could throw out some pretty decent things in a year. I won't run again. You know, I paid my dues.
Councilmember Duran.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Zeno, for being here tonight. I'll ask the same question I've been asking. What key issues do you believe are currently facing our community, and what strategic plans, master plans, or general city initiatives do you believe address these, or what gaps in these efforts do you see exist?
Can you talk slower?
Absolutely. So first, what key issues are currently facing our community? So you can talk about the issues. And then from that, what strategic plans or master plans or general city initiatives do you believe address these, or what gaps in those initiatives do you see exist?
I mean, it's like I said with the concept of a hometown. We have a, you know, I mean, we're going to build another giant cheese plant that's going to need a whole bunch of employees, and we don't have enough employees and houses already, you know, where if we could look into technical kinds of things, you know, where they just store tons of data and use a ton of electricity, those kinds of things, much more focused, like I say, with the concept of a hometown, we could recruit all kinds of people who work from home. And, you know, and I think that's a place where if we really focused on saying, hey, we got a great hometown, bring your kids here, you work from home, and if your spouse is doing something in town, there's always one of you there with your children. When I grew up, my parents moved all over the place. So with my wife, we decided I would never be further from work than I could walk. Because my dad was a gigantic executive in New York City. He was vice president of the biggest chemical company in the world, and left for work at 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the morning and came back home at 9 o'clock every night. So, no, I mean, and it's, that's the general areas where I would focus on, is where are those small places and what can we do? I mean, one of the things way back in the day was when Kyle Bender and I formed what the current thing is for young professionals. We just called it the Sub-40 Social. And we got literally everybody, university, 3M, we got 5 different companies to give us money to have free beer and food. And we did that, and it was amazing the number of times that people turned out. I've told the chamber to do the same thing, but they charge to be a member. Well, if we're trying to encourage young people to get engaged, charging them to get engaged, I still disagree with that. And as a community, I mean, all of you have hired people. What's one, to save one person that you hired for $1,000, you're saving a bundle, right? And so your company giving $1,000 so a bunch of people can, I don't know, have a drink and eat and talk. We always did goofy things like, okay, in the next 5 minutes, introduce yourself to 3 people you don't know. And, you know, I mean, we just really did all kinds. We had any activities in town. We tried to have it at all the different cool places in town so they'd get to see the Children's Museum and they get to see the nature park and all that kind of stuff. And it really got people engaged. You know, I mean, one of the things, I think it would be fun if you made July Block Party Month, where you just tell all the blocks to have block parties, you know, because we have a little block party in our neighborhood, and it's, you know, a bunch of people that we know them because of the block party, but other than that, no reason at all. And one of the things this day and age, people have to be encouraged to do something. There's not a lot of proactivity out there, you know, and that I think goes back to when I taught in a university. I'm sure Nick would realize the number of kids who come and their mom makes their bed and hangs up their clothes and everything under the sun and says, is there anything else you need? And they'll say, get out of here, you know. But 5 minutes later, they'll call up mom and say, where am I supposed to go to lunch? That's one of the biggest problems that we've seen in the last 25 years, I believe, is we have not infused proactivity. because people don't go to things because we don't give them a reason to go. And by giving people reasons to go, I think we could get all kinds of attendance at our different stuff. You know, if I used to give my students 5 points extra credit if they'd go to taste foreign food, or if they'd go listen to an agronomy person talking about a garden in Italy. You know, who cares? It's 5 points. I wasn't a competitive teacher anyway, but the number of kids who would go because they had a reason. And I think as a town, we can do all kinds of things like that. Sorry to interrupt you. I'm sorry.
Councilmember Tilton Burden?
So, Zeno, I think you probably have some previous experience with the question that I've been asking tonight, but talk to us a little bit about what you think the commitment is outside of the regular meetings and how you would go about doing that.
What is my commitment to what? I don't have my hearings in.
What the commitment of a city council member is to the role of being a city council member beyond the
like I
meetings.
say, if you're employed, I have, you know, business stuff to do, but I think for me, it should be between, you know, your family is obviously extremely important, but to look at being on a variety of other things or other commitments other than your employment, I think it should really be prioritized. I mean, I believe that whenever there's committee meetings and that kind of stuff, if you can't attend, you should be watching it on the TV. I mean, because these are decisions. I mean, the question you had before about talking to city employees, all the city employees work for Paul Brasino. If you're talking to city employees, you should be making sure that he knows you're talking to Pleiadians, you know, and that's not you people, but I mean all of his employees. And if you're talking to them, he should always know that you are, because they work for him, not you. And so along those lines, I just think, you know, sort of that kind of stuff.
Okay. Councilmember Wendell?
Zeno, will you talk to us a little bit about your working style, how you see yourself collaborating with the council?
Oh, yeah, I mean, I just, you know, I'm the person that I've lived my entire life on one very simple model. I'm solution-oriented. And you won't see me argue, take a picture, because it doesn't happen hardly ever. Much more of a model of what's a solution that we could have. I mean, all of you, you know, I call you periodically. Some of you don't call back, but that doesn't mean I didn't try. And, you know, I send you emails sometimes, too, on my thoughts. And, no, I think you guys are doing a great job. You know, there's just other areas that I think, you know, from the way, you know, and I guess I've been known as the idea man, but whatever that is, I don't have a clue.
All right. Zeno, I'll ask the last question. So we're obviously losing on federal funding being pulled from the federal government for a lot of our youth-oriented programs that we have in this area. Where do you see the city in part of that solution?
Well, I mean, I think the focus has to be children and seniors is where we have a real responsibility. I mean, in terms of programs and that kind of stuff. I do think that we can analyze where we spend. I know the scholarship is really an important thing, and I thought it was a good idea, but the point would be is we can delay that for 3 years, you know, free up that $500,000 to $300,000, all right? Because it's an ongoing program, but if we just say, hey, in the short term, we really need this to get our program through, and that's just an example. I mean, if you look at things that we're doing, all right, that can just be put on hold that are costing money. And so that's, I think, one way that the city could figure out some stuff. And it's, you guys are way better at it than me in terms of identifying those kind of things. But, you know, and as a community, we're certainly very generous people. I've served on about every board and committee in town. And take it from there. And I would expect that the city government, I mean, the state government should be approached on it as well. You know, they have a responsibility to us, and they have some ongoing projects that could be, you know, wait a year or two. So, you know, and obviously I think we have a very beneficial thing. It'd be interesting for you to bring in a guy named Randy Perry. He had a thing, he was professor down, or teacher down in Howard, and he had his class go around and knock on every single door in the county and say, we're doing a test to see if it will help our town and county if you commit to spending 10% of the money that you spend out of town in town. And having college or high school students doing this, people were like, well, I could sort of fall for that. And it generated multi-million dollars over a period of time. And so if we just had, getting students engaged in that kind of thing, where you just go around and say, hey, if you shop local, this is one thing that, our schools will be better, our town will be better, all right? Because people, they just don't think about it anymore in the terms of, sales tax and that kind of stuff. So that would be a way to really generate sales as well. I mean, it was just impressive. It'd be a fun presentation for you to have him show you what he generated doing that.
Okay. Thank you very much, Zeno. That concludes our interview. We will take questions or comments from the public. Please come up and state your name and address, and we'll have a 3-minute limit on each comment.
Hello, I'm Tim Guttormson. My address is Bruce, South Dakota, but I'm a business person in Brookings, South Dakota, and taxpayer. I came tonight to give support to Al Ostrom. Al is an entrepreneur and business owner, as you've heard, and always thinking about solutions. As an entrepreneur, you've got to figure it out. And you are responsible for budgets, and budgets are hard. And you're responsible for your clients and employees. So he has a lot of good traits. I got to meet Al, so I'm going to tell you a little story. My kids were in hockey, and I got asked to run for the director of finance, and I never had any aspiration to be on a youth hockey board. So I came to the meeting and I sat down, and Al was next to me. And I talked to him and learned a little bit about Al. That evolved into Al and a couple other people talking me into running to be the president of BISA, which I got elected to. And we had a budget issue. We wanted to hire a hockey director, a full-time hockey director to improve Brookings hockey, a $50,000 position. In youth hockey, or in youth sports, that's real money. And our solution was to come up with hot hockey nights. And, for BISA, this will be the 7th year of hot hockey nights. But we worked together and came up with a solution. And out of that spun Bring Back Baseball. That came up for baseball so they could get, the AstroTurf field to help pay for that. So those are entrepreneurs with ideas. So I know sometimes as an entrepreneur, you're outspoken, but that is a positive. I once had a professor from Ohio State say, creative friction yields some of the best solutions. So I would encourage you, possibly for some of you, it's a stretch of your comfort level. But one of our former Dean of Ag, Fred Chalik, he said, I've gotten so comfortable in this position, I have to leave. So I would encourage you to consider Al for this position. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, City Manager, council members, My name is Jeff West. I've been a resident of Brookings since I retired in 2013, and I'm here to support Al Ostrom for this open seat on the City Council. And here's why. Al has lived in Brookings since 1995 when he moved from Flandreau to go to SDSU, where he graduated. He is a small business owner here in town, as you well know, and he's raised his family in Brookings. His 30 years of residence and business ownership make him more than qualified as a dedicated Brookings citizen and with a higher stake in our city than most. Al's landscaping business keeps him in constant contact with business owners, homeowners, landlords, and government organizations. Because of this, he's very tuned in to the needs of our community at every level. He's in a position to give back to our community at this time, and his experience and knowledge would be a valuable asset to the City Council, our citizens, and the future of our city. Al wants more citizens to get involved in governing their city, and by doing so, bring greater transparency to city government. This goal is driven by his contact with members of the community who, like Al, sometimes question the decisions made about our future. Not because the decisions are not good, but in order to fully explore the options available and how they affect our citizens in the short and long term. That's where his community contacts and experience become pertinent to the decision-making process. Adding his unique views to the governing procedures would be extremely valuable. I urge you to select Al Ostrom. The community at large, through the election process, has brought him close to winning a seat 2 times now. And had the empty seat been part of the regular election process, then he would be on the council already. So it's time to make that happen and give this man, who only wants to help our city, the opportunity to serve. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. I'm John Mills, and glad to be here tonight. It's been interesting to listen to everybody tonight, ideas and experience and backgrounds that they bring to all try to get one seat. And I have no doubt sitting in the back of the room that more than one of these people that's applying tonight will one day sit in these seats. And I'm grateful for each one of them that's willing to put their name on the list and come before you. But you have to pick one. And I'm here, like the 2 previous speakers, to support Al Ostrom for that position and to tell you why I think so. The obvious reason is the one that's already been mentioned, that he's ran twice and he's come up close. And so there are obviously a lot of Brookings people that would like to see him on the council. The second reason, I think, is one that all of you recognize and resonate with, and that is that he chose to campaign for this position. And that's a level of commitment that nobody else that's talking to you tonight has done. And you know what that means. It means committing your resources of time and money to try to earn that seat. And Al's the only one here that's done that. And lastly, I just want to tell you a little bit about the Ostrom family, because I've had the privilege of working with 2 generations of Ostroms now since they made the move to Brookings. And I know Doug is in the audience tonight, and I've had the privilege of working with both Alan and Andrew on a lot of different construction projects through the years. And I can tell you that they operate with honesty and integrity. Even when we had challenges, which is what you guys deal with all the time, where there was a disagreement over something, we were always able to meet, to talk it through, and come to a solution that I know I always felt like was fair to the Ostrom business that I was working with and was fair to me. And I trust that Al will treat his role on the council that way as well. And so I would just encourage you to put Al in the seat and let the other folks campaign for a future seat. I have confidence some of them will be there. Thank you.
Hello, my name is David Knipe, and I'm here to thank every one of the candidates that had put in their name to support, but most importantly, I'm here for Alan Ostrom. I've known the Ostrom family for years. I was less familiar with Al, And Al, when he campaigned, he came to my business. He was forthright. He put himself out there, and I was really impressed with that. And I was going to talk about how a third of the people in the organization of our vote had voted for him, but it just came to me when Ope Niemeyer, our mayor, was talking about ways to come up with solutions for the youth or for programs that might get cut. And, Alan had pulled me aside after he came campaigning to my business, pulled me aside and he said, kind of bothers me that these kids at the prom have to pay money to attend the prom. And he goes, there's got to be some kids that just can't afford to go, and it just wouldn't be right. He said, I made a call, and I think that if we raise $7,500, we could eliminate that cost. He said, it's too bad that it's that much, but Swiftel has to charge for their services, and certainly I wonder if we can negotiate, through the city that, maybe we have some of the the issues like with a school that could use that without having a charge or pay for security and just have it as a nominal charge. But he said, with that not being done, let's just raise $7,500. He said, would you give me $2,500? And I mean, he is out there doing this, and with all the things that he has to do, and with campaigning and everything. And then we were all taking checks up to the school the other day, and Alan came, and the school wanted a picture. And Alan says, I'm not in the picture. And he says, I'm just the guy that went out and talked to people. That's the kind of guy Al is. And I think that when you have somebody with that character that really wants that spot, and they've been out there, put themselves out there to work for it, I think they deserve it. And I would really like you to support him in this endeavor. Thank you.
I would come up here to remind you that I only ran because I thought Al was going to win, so my vote would still be for Al.
I'm Mike McClemens. Most of you know who I am. I'd also like to throw a little encouragement behind Alan. Everybody up there comes from a little different situation. Everybody brings different ideas. Everybody has different backgrounds, and you all bring something of value that others don't have. And that's what Alan also does, is he works with a occupation where he has to employ people. He works with people in the contracting business. He has a good background. He's obviously run for a council twice, and I just think he's someone who has a good value for the council. I think he brings good experience and good thoughts. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Jane Pafer. You've never seen me here before, the county commissioners have. Brookings is my address according to the U.S. Postal Service. I live right outside the Brookings city limit in the joint jurisdiction. I met Al about a year ago, and what I would encourage you to think about is that Doris Kearns Goodwin wrote a book about Abraham Lincoln's cabinet called Team of Rivals. That's how you get really good decisions and opinions, when you have hotly debated topics, not when you have an echo chamber. I think there is a very serious issue facing the city of Brookings, and nobody's talking about it. All the development is moving south into the joint jurisdiction, where the population is growing dramatically and where we have no vote in the city of Brookings. So this is something that I talked with Al about when I first met him a year ago during his first campaign, and I would like you to consider his appointment tonight with great seriousness. Thank you for listening to me.
Do we have any other public comment? Okay. Well, thank you all for coming here this evening. I appreciate the candidates putting themselves out there and giving us an insight of who they are and what they stand for. Our next steps will be proposed City Council action for the appointment on the 22nd of April. Swearing in would be held on the May 13th City Council meeting. Unless something else happens, that is the plan. It may get delayed. So I was told by the city clerk to mention that. And then from there, we will start our regular meeting. Let's take about 5 minutes. We'll get started at 7:20. Okay, so while Holly and Bree are getting their seats, I probably should have mentioned that hopefully we get texts, we get phone calls, we get emails from the citizens of Brookings as to help us make a decision for our appointment for our open seat on City Council. All right, with that being said, we'll go right away to open forum. Is there any member of the public who wishes to address the council on an item not listed on tonight's agenda? Please state your name, sir.
Yes, Mayor, Council, residents of Brookings, my name is Reggie Huff. So after losing my wife of 30 years to a tragic accident, I chose to move here with my youngest daughter, Samantha, and make this place my home. So I've been here for 11 years now, and my daughter works at Solventum. I've started a couple of businesses. I started Eccentric Innovations Limited and Trick Cycle Turbine Limited and Huff Investigations, all three of which are South Dakota corporations, proudly. And my company right now, Trick Cycle Turbine, has made a monumental discovery. It's been about 150 years since Nicholas Otto came up with the original internal combustion engine with the pistons and the crank lever action, poppet valves, all that kind of stuff. We have made a monumental discovery of a positive displacement type of turbine engine, unlike anything that's ever been seen before. The improvement in efficiency and in every aspect of what we want to get out of an engine is so monumental that over the next few decades, we're going to see a transformation to where the world will start to be powered by this new energy source. It has been said that the biggest mistake that smart engineers make is trying to optimize the thing that should not exist. And because of this new discovery, the thing that should not exist is pistons, poppet valves, crank lever action, and EVs. Because yes, this engine will beat an EV at every single level, even maintenance. So, I'm just here tonight to introduce myself to the community. Not a lot of people know me, even though I've been here for 11 years and I'm active in commerce in the local businesses and that type of thing. But we're going to need to talk about issues with the city's deficiency in being welcoming and respectful of people like myself to come here and have the potential to do something so monumental that it could literally change the face of this city. And if I continue to choose to make this place my home, that's what's going to happen because of the monumental discovery of the Tomahawk turbine engine. So,
thank you for your comments.
Till next time, all right?
Any other people that want to make any comments that are not on the agenda? All right, we'll go on to consent agenda. Is there any items that need to be removed from the consent agenda? Entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So move.
Any public comment on any of the consent agenda items? Council, questions, comments? Please call the roll.
Doran.
Aye.
Niemeyer.
Aye.
Specker.
Aye.
Tiltonburn.
Aye.
Wendell.
Aye.
Avery.
Aye. Okay. SDSU Student Association report. We have a new gal tonight, Anna Hunt. Please introduce yourself and tell us what's been going on.
Yes. Hi, my name is Anna Hunt. I'm the newly appointed Government Affairs Chair. I was appointed by our newly elected President Sophie Spear and Vice President Wesley Sierra. I'm actually originally from Cashton, Wisconsin, and I'm a freshman planning to graduate in December of 27. Just a short introduction about myself. The couple things that we have going on campus in the next couple weeks obviously is commencement that happens at the end of finals week, which is May 10th. And then also Ag Week is all week next week, so we have a lot of things going on for that. Yes.
All right, thanks, Anna. Anybody have any questions for Anna? Councilmember Tilton Burn.
I just want to say welcome and congratulations on your new role.
Thank you.
All right. Hope to see your shining face next fall. Okay, ex officio reports. Utility Board.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I will give a short report. I did attend the meeting yesterday. Several items on the agenda that were of note. One was some amendments to the Western Area Power Administration, or WAPA agreement, in kind of an indicator of the length, the time horizons that we're dealing with some of these things. So there were some amendments to the agreement, and they take the contract out through December 31st of 2050. And the WAPA power is the power that is allotted to the city of Brookings from the dams, which is about 30% of the power that we use. So it's not, and that's set, it was set years ago, and we get that same amount until 2050 anyway. The other item that was discussed was the advanced metering infrastructure, and we've talked about that before, but there's our meters now for our electricity and water are monitored continuously. We don't have a meter reader type thing anymore, and they keep track of power use and water use to the point where if someone would have a significant issue with a broken water line or something, they could focus on that and be aware of that and send somebody out to fix it or notify the homeowner and that type of thing. So, and it's to the point now where at some point, fairly near future, you'll be able to have an app on your phone that will monitor your power usage and your water usage, so you can keep track of things. So those are two things that were on the agenda that I thought were noteworthy. So.
All right, thank you. And Brookings Health Service.
Thank you, Mayor. We discussed several updates at the last health system meeting. We went over the results of the audit report, and it came back clean. We also discussed the growing impact of Medicare Advantage on rural hospitals. You may have recently seen an article about it in the Brookings Register, so you can read that to learn more. We discussed just the continuation of the Yorkshire Medical Building construction with a couple of items going out to bids, and the continued transition in internal financial software use. Otherwise, there were discussions around the 2025 quality task force teams that were created, one around safety and care, another around timeliness and effectiveness, and then another around mortality and readmission. So those were created, as well as they're working through identifying the quality measures that they'll track. 2 bilingual doulas will soon complete certification and screening to be able to join the doula team and provide care to Spanish-speaking patients. And the health system has been engaged with the Brookings Child Care Collaborative to look at several opportunities and an internal conversation around their employees in child care. And then the State Department of Health recertification survey took place earlier this month, or last month, excuse me. And while there were a few deficiencies, they had submitted a plan of correction to the Department of Health, and the surveyors noted that they were very impressed with the team here and created an educational environment for improvement. Finally, information was shared on being named the top 20 rural community hospital for the 10th time. So congratulations. End of report.
All right, thank you. Now we'll have an update on the downtown fire. And since you guys are all standing here, I really appreciate what you guys did for us downtown. We still have buildings standing. We could have lost a lot more in what happened there. Because of you guys, we still have buildings there. Thank you.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. As you are well aware, the downtown community experienced a tragic fire on December 30th, 2024, starting at Bros Fashion at 318 Main Avenue. The fire impacted structures at 314, 318, 320, and 322 Main Avenue. An initial downtown fire update was provided at the March 11th City Council meeting. As a reminder, the city has convened a fire response task force consisting of staff from the city manager's office, fire department, police department, public works department, community development, as well as Brookings Municipal Utilities. The focus of the task force is on ongoing communication, next steps for the impacted properties, and municipal code, policy, and state law review in consideration of peer communities and best practices. Since the March 11th meeting and downtown fire update, the task force has met 2 times with focus on communication and site remediation. A second meeting was held with impacted building owners in late March to understand how they're doing, action taken to date, next steps, share city and downtown resources, as well as inquire about any other opportunities to be of assistance. I'll now provide a quick overview of the status of each of the impacted properties. Starting at the south at 314 Main Avenue, the building has been determined to be structurally sound and undergoing restoration efforts with a target of being operational in summer 2025. 318 Main Avenue, Bros Fashions are the site of the origination of the fire. A structure analysis has been performed last week. The property owner has solicited quotes for the removal of debris. An 11.1 historic review for demolition was approved by the State Historic Preservation Office, or SHPO, and then the next steps will be finalizing that structural analysis and then completing debris removal. 320 Main Avenue, also known as the Seven Songbirds building, that building has been declared a total loss. The property owner has also submitted an 11.1 historic review through SHPO for demolition, and it was approved. Next steps will be finalization of the demolition permit and progressing towards the demolition phase, which was based on the shoring of the shared wall with the exchange to the north, which is at 322 Main Avenue. A building permit has been issued to the exchange to shore up that shared wall with Seven Songbirds, and a historic preservation review has been submitted for the exterior improvements at the exchange. The work to shore up that wall is currently ongoing, and once that's completed, it will allow for the demolition of the Seven Songbirds building at 320 Main Avenue. The majority of the impacted building owners have expressed an interest in meeting monthly for the next couple of months with the city, as well as downtown Brookings, to share progress updates and identify any opportunities for cooperation and collaboration. Our timeline is fluid and dependent on working through the historic preservation review, demolition permits, building permits, as well as other processes. A monthly update will be provided as desired at City Council meetings for the foreseeable future to ensure that the City Council, as well as the public, stay informed on this topic. Supplemental press releases, social media posts, and other communications may be used as appropriate as well. I'm happy to stand for any questions that council may have.
All right, thanks, Jake. Questions from council? Councilmember Duren?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Jake, for this update. You had mentioned on the 314 building an ideal timeline. I understand that it's fluid and there's a lot of moving pieces. Are there any other ideal timelines of any of the buildings that they're working towards?
At this stage, I would say that between the city and our fire response task force and those downtown building owners, we're certainly trying to engage them and work in a cooperative fashion at this point. We do have some timelines certainly that we're working towards that we want to see achieved, certainly yet this construction season. A little bit hesitant to put a specific timeline on it because there are certain things that may be outside of their control. Certainly completing the historic preservation review was a key timeline, but I don't want to put them in an uncomfortable position because their demolitions and such will be dependent on contractor availability, and different things of that nature, also weather and such. So really the goal for us is we want to continue to keep seeing things move in a fluid and dynamic fashion, and just really understanding that everyone involved is taking the steps that are within their control, yet remaining a level of flexibility if there are things outside of their control that come up during this process.
Sure. Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right, thanks, Jake. We'll move on to item 8A, action on resolution 25-033, a resolution authorizing naming the fire department fire training tower. And Jake Meschke will present that item.
I think this might be the most highest stakes item I have presented in my entire career at this point. Our esteemed Fire Chief Pete Bolzer will be retiring at the end of this month after 25 years of service to the city of Brookings and over 45 years of service in the emergency services field. I do also want to put a plug in and encourage everyone to attend the public open house to honor Pete. It'll be held at the East Fire Station on April 23rd from 2 to 4. Everyone in this room is welcome to attend, as well as all of the members of the public watching at home. I've personally had the privilege of working closely with Pete, especially over the last 2 years. If there's one thing that Pete has impressed on me, it's the care that he has for his firefighters and their safety. One of the ways that Pete has shown that care is through his passion and focus on training, which is why I don't think that the fire staff or volunteers could have come up with a more fitting request than naming the training tower in Pete's honor. With that, I'm very happy and proud to recommend approval of naming the training tower the Chief Pete Bolzer Training Tower, or Pete's Place, in recognition of his 25-plus years of dedicated service to the city of Brookings.
All right. Entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second?
All right. Any comments on this item from the public? Council questions, comments? Councilmember Specker.
I just want to throw in there that this was actually the first thing I ever voted on, and was down there for the open house, and just, it's an amazing facility. And I thank Pete for pushing that through in the city.
All right. Councilmember Tilton Burn.
I just want to take the opportunity to thank Chief Bolzer for your many years of service. And since we have all of the fire department, it looks like here, thanks to all of you for your service. But we're very fortunate to have the many years that we have under Chief Bolzer's service here. And so thank you for all you've done.
All right. Oh, you got some comments?
Yeah, I would just like to personally thank Pete for his dedication to the community and to our volunteers and the staff of the fire department. Many of you probably know how much Pete truly cares, but he cares about each and every one of you and everyone in this community. Pete lives Brookings day in, day out. There's no time that Pete isn't always thinking about each and every one of you, every moment and move you make. And just know that Pete values, and I value each and every one of you. Pete, thank you for your years of commitment to the organization and to the community, and look forward to seeing you maybe at coffee in the future.
So, kind of a humorous story. I've been mistaken for driving the fire truck pickup around every once in a while. I said that wasn't me, that was actually Pete. So we do have somewhat of a resemblance. So I kind of brothers in arms, Pete. Appreciate it. Oh yeah, we do want to do a picture, obviously, but let's finish up this motion first. Please call the roll.
Niemeyer.
Aye.
Specker.
Aye.
Tilton Burn.
Aye.
Wendell.
Aye.
Avery.
Aye.
Doran.
Aye.
Okay, I think we're going to have everybody stand right in front of the deal here, and I don't know if we're going to stand up on top here, or I think that's probably appropriate, and have everybody up front. Thank you guys for all hanging here. It's been a long night so far.
You're in the middle. I'm in the middle. You're right there in the front.
Everyone see me? And smile. Thank you.
Hey, you guys sit down. You gotta give a speech.
Peter. Pete? You want to make any comments, Pete? All right. Have a night.
Too emotional.
Yeah, I get it.
Thank you.
All right, item 9, first readings, introduction and first reading on ordinance 25-009, 1.1, an ordinance amending Chapter 6, Article 1, Section 6 to 8 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Brookings pertaining to sidewalk cafe alcoholic beverage sales and consumption guidelines. Bonnie Foster, our City Clerk, will present this item.
Mayor and councils and members of the public, in 2008, House Bill 1203 allowed municipalities to permit on-sale licenses to sell and consume alcoholic beverages on sidewalks and walkways adjacent to and abutting the building containing the licensed premises. State statute states, nothing in this section prevents a governing body from imposing conditions or restrictions that the governing body considers appropriate. From this, the Brookings Council passed an ordinance allowing sidewalk sales and consumption of alcoholic beverages, but imposed the license holder must receive 50% of their gross revenue from the sale of prepared food in order to qualify for those sidewalk alcoholic beverage permits. City staff would like to recommend amending code to remove the requirement of that 50% of prepared food in order to qualify for a sidewalk sales alcoholic beverage permit. By removing this restriction in code, the city would allow more establishments to enjoy the expansion of outdoor seating onto the public-facing side of their establishments, creating a feeling of community in the downtown corridor. The application process, fees, site plan review, ADA accessibility, supervision, physical borders, and so forth, as stated in code, will remain intact, and the permit can be revoked if there is a failure to maintain the area according to the identified standards. So a second reading and action would be held on this at next week's council meeting, and we stand by for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Bonnie. Any public questions, or any comments or questions from the public? Council questions, comments at the moment? Councilmember Specker?
So there are standards of what it should be maintained like?
Yes,
already?
as far as cleanliness, maintaining an open corridor on the sidewalk which meets ADA standards. The furniture and the barricades have to be removable. They cannot be hard fixtured into the sidewalk.
Okay. Thank you, Bonnie.
Councilmember Tilton Burn?
Can you tell me, would this be, in order to be able to do this, would an individual need or a business need an additional permit, or would this sort of be covered under their alcohol license that they have?
They would first have to have an on-sale alcoholic beverage license, and then the city does have a sidewalk permit application that they would have to submit for staff review. So there would be a site plan that they'd have to submit with this, the footage to keep the ADA path, where are your tables, what kind of barricades are you going to use to cordon off and identify the area that you want to use.
And is there an additional cost for that application?
Right now, that fee is at $100 for the year.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Dern?
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, I think I had two questions, and I think you may have just answered one. So if you could just confirm for me. So you had mentioned the permit process of the site plan and ADA compliance, et cetera. That is an administrative process, so staff will review that. That's not something that will come to council when someone applies for it, correct?
Correct. This is an administrative process.
Perfect. Thank you. And then just confirming too, the removal of this passage would actually put us in alignment with the updated state law. Is that correct? Because state law doesn't have this 50%?
Correct. State law doesn't have the 50% requirement. That was something that the city council at the time decided was important for the city of Brookings to have.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Wendell?
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to confirm on the application, is that an annual application that they have to submit? And is that
Correct.
fee an annual fee that they pay?
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Councilmember Tilton Burn?
I'm curious to know how this could potentially impact things like downtown at sundown, where some of the establishments that are located downtown may also be selling food items and beverage items at something like downtown at sundown. Would they then be able to operate that evening under this license, or would there be a separate license that they would need for an event like that if they have a physical location in the downtown area?
Sam, do you have an idea? We haven't really talked about that.
Yeah, I would say in the ordinances, it does say that the establishment can, their hours of operation are based on the hours of operation that are on their alcohol, the on and off sale license. So I would assume that they could theoretically continue to do that under this, but I think you can also pull them out, and if they want to have a separate, tent or something up out at that time too, I think they could do that.
I would not advocate that we do something separate. I think that if they do have a building located in the downtown district and they're participating in an event that's happening in their downtown district, that they should be able to do that under an ordinance like this. And so that's actually why I ask, is I just want to make sure that this would cover that, so that there wouldn't be, they'd have to get this license, but then they'd also have to get another license if they wanted to sell it downtown at sundown, that sort of thing. Just avoid that kind of confusion.
Yeah, I think as it's written right now, I think that's how it would operate.
Any other questions, comments? All right, thank you. We'll have second reading on the 22nd of April. All right, item 10, second readings and public hearings. Item 10A, public hearing and action on Resolution 25-032, a resolution determining the necessity of repairing and installing sidewalks in the city of Brookings at the expense of abutting property owners. 2024-01 SWR Concrete Maintenance Project. John Thompson, our Public Works Director, will present this item.
Good evening, Mayor, Council members. John Thompson, Public Works. 10A is a resolution of necessity for our annual sidewalk repair program. The program is part of our proactive effort to address sidewalk trip hazards throughout the city. In 2024, staff identified 68 sidewalk locations needing repair. Property owners were notified on August 28, 2024, and again on April 3, 2025. Of the 68 locations, 13 of them are the city's responsibility, which typically means that there are boulevard trees that lifted the sidewalks. 55 of them are responsibility of the abutting property owners. Among the 55 private locations, 28 property owners have opted to be included in the city's repair project. They understand that the actual repair costs plus a 6% administration fee will be assessed to their property once the project is complete. One property owner has already completed repairs independently. 2 property owners have indicated that they will hire their own contractor, and 24 property owners have not responded. If this resolution is approved tonight, staff will proceed with the bidding of the 2024 sidewalk repair project, with construction expected to be completed by Q3 of 2025. It's important to note, property owners on tonight's proposed assessment list may still choose to complete the repairs independently. However, they must notify Public Works Engineering Division before the contract is awarded, which is anticipated to occur approximately on June 10th. Additionally, the city has partnered with Interlakes Community Action Partnership, ICAP, to assist qualifying low-income property owners with repair costs. Property owners concerned about financial hardship this may bring to them may contact Public Works Engineering Division to be referred to ICAP. Regarding funding of this project, there are sufficient appropriations in the amended 2025 budget under Fund 213 Capital Projects. The city's share for the 13 locations it's responsible for is estimated about $17,000. That concludes staff's presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, John. Entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and second. Is there any public comments on this item? Council, questions, comments? Councilmember Tilton Burn.
I have 2 questions. My first question is, when this goes out to bid, will that include the 24 properties that have not yet responded to the inquiry?
Yes, the assessment list tonight that's on in your agenda package, it would include all of those.
Wonderful. My other question is, are the property owners directly provided the information about the ICAP resources?
They are I think last year, in the initial notice, it stated something. We did not do it in the April 3rd notice. They'll generally call us if they have any concerns, and then they'll be directed over to ICAP.
Okay, thank you.
Last year, we did offer this program too, and we had 0 calls.
Okay. Councilmember Duren.
Thank you, Mayor. Just as a follow-up to that comment, Has there been any calls this year of looking at taking advantage of those funds?
Not yet.
Okay.
No. The only calls that we've had so far were the three that I mentioned earlier. One called and said, hey, I already completed it, and two others called and said, yeah, we want to complete it before you guys go out to bid. So they'll be on the assessment list, but if they've got a contractor going already before we start work there, we take them off.
Thank you.
All right. Seeing no other comments, please call the roll.
Specker.
Aye.
Tiltonburn.
Aye.
Wendell.
Aye.
Avery.
Aye.
Dorine.
Aye.
Niemeyer.
Aye. Item 11A, action on resolution 25-035, a resolution setting forth a schedule of proposed fines for violation of the ordinances of the City of Brookings. John Thompson, our Public Works Director, will present this item.
So item 11A, again, is a resolution setting forth a schedule of proposed fees for violation of the newly adopted floodplain ordinance. On March 22nd, 2025, your council approved ordinance 25-010, amending the City of Brookings Code, Chapter 38, floods. The updated ordinance language includes required language provided by FEMA and includes language to implement penalties for noncompliance of the ordinance. Section 3845, penalties for noncompliance, specifically provides language for the City of Brookings City Council to, by resolution, adopt fines for violation of the amended code. For this item tonight, I can read the specific language into the record. However, to shorten it up a little bit, basically any violations would be if you were to add a structure, modify a land, extend a structure, convert the land, or alter it without full compliance of the ordinance code, you would be in violation of this ordinance. And fines may be assessed up to daily, depending on courts. So staff's recommendation tonight is to implement fines which are consistent with the maximum fine limits provided by state law and also by city ordinances. The first offense would be $300 plus court costs of $72.50. The second offense would be $400 plus court costs of $72.50. The third offense would be $500 plus court costs and $72.50. If approved tonight, the proposed fees will be included in the 2025 consolidated fee schedule. Lastly, I'd like to note that staff will provide property owners with ample notice and will collaboratively work with each property owner to address and correct any violations before any types of fines are implemented. That concludes staff's presentation.
All right. Any public comment on this item? So, council questions, you've already answered the question right at the end there, John, that the staff would work with violation and the fine wouldn't start until there was no compromise on it. Oh, very good. Entertain a motion to approve, I'm sorry.
So moved.
Second.
All right. No public comment. Councilmember Wendell.
Thank you, Mayor. John, can you just articulate again, I think you noted it, the frequency of an offense or when a fine might be applied? Like what would, first, second, and third offense, and did you say it could be applied up to daily depending on the court's decision?
Depending on the court, because, so the way I'd see it on the flow chart, I do have a minor flow chart, but I did not include that in the agenda package. Staff would be advised of a potential violation. Staff would then go out and research that to see whether or not that is a violation. And generally what happens, we'll go out and meet with the property owner, explain to him what the deal is, see if we can work that correction out that way. If we cannot work that out cooperatively and collaboratively, we'd move to the next step. And the next step would be putting a stop work order notice on that property owner. And if they still did not want to work cooperatively and get this corrected, we'd go one step further, and that would be the implementing of the fine, which would ultimately go into court process for the judge to consider. And if, I mean, and then that, I believe, as a counsel helped me on this one, at court, the judge will ask the city's recommendation. If the property owner is working with us, well, we're probably not going to get in there, but if he's not working, he or she is not working with us, we could recommend up to a daily fine for that first one, and the second and the third too. But we would, like I say, I want to stress that we do work with the property owners first. We want to make sure that we can try to work it out before we go to that direction.
Councilmember Specker.
So just to confirm, this is a FEMA flood insurance program requirement.
Yep. Yeah, I didn't want to read, I've got a half a page of just very specific language, but to just, in the essence of time tonight, I didn't want to read it. But it is very specific that if the city of Brookings wants to remain in the National Flood Insurance Program, we need to include this in the ordinance, which we did basically copy what FEMA had, and it specifically states that we have to adopt effective enforcement provisions.
Okay, thank you.
All right. No other comments? Please call the roll.
Tildenburn.
Aye.
Wendell.
Aye.
Avery.
Aye.
Doran. Aye. Niemeyer.
Aye.
Specker.
Aye.
Okay. Item 11B, action on resolution 25-031. A resolution authorizing the acquisition of real property for the 20th Street South and 22nd Avenue South intersection improvements. John Thompson will also present this item.
Item 11B is a proposed resolution that will authorize the acquisition of real property for the future 20th Street South and 22nd Avenue South intersection improvements. This resolution will authorize the city manager to enter an agreement with the Paul E. Moriarty Living Trust in the amount of $158,522.50 for the purchase of 7,938 square feet of real property as future right-of-way. This is approximately $21.62 per square foot, which is slightly lower than the acquisition cost of the southwestern right-of-way we acquired last year. Due to the imminent development expected on this northwestern corner, it's important that we settle these right-of-way for future proper alignment immediately before it gets built out. Sufficient appropriations exist in the amended 2025 fiscal year budget, Fund 213, Capital Improvements, Streets and Sidewalks, and that concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you. Entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Is there public comment on this item? See none. Council questions, comments? All right. Please call the roll.
Wendell.
Aye.
Avery.
Aye.
Doran. Aye. Niemeyer.
Aye.
Specker.
Aye.
Tildenburn.
Aye.
Okay, that concludes our business tonight. Next meeting, we'll have, next meeting is April 22nd. Introduction of new staff from the Public Works Department, students report possibly, recognition of City Attorney Steve Britzman, and Economic Development Partners merger, Edgebrook Golf Course watering source cost estimate. We have 4 bid awards to do: taxi lane at the airport, asphalt material FOB, asphalt maintenance project, and a sign truck. And then sidewalk sales change, we'll have a second reading on that. Other business, Edgebrook Golf Course capital contributions increase, and action to appoint city council member. And then always the highly anticipated progress report. Any other council members want something on the agenda in the future? All right, we will be going into an executive session. We will not be taking any action outside of that. Executive session pursuant to SDCL 1-25-2.1 for the purpose of discussing the qualifications, competence, performance, character, or fitness of any public officer, employee, or prospective public officer, employee. The term employee does not include any independent contractor. Entertain a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? We are in executive session.